Hi, I'm Tim Mosso at WatchBox, Dubai 2021 with Max Büsser, founder and principal at MB&F. Max, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to see you.
Max is always a pleasure and a live wire interview, so we're going to try to do what we can to keep him in his seat, but this might get bumpy, guys. Buckle up. Max, tell me a little bit. Crazy 2 years. We haven't really met since Dubai Watch Week in 2019. How has the business environment changed, and what has 2021 been like from a sales standpoint?
So March 2020, all our suppliers are closed, all our retailers are closed. I have to send my whole team back home. It's locked down in Switzerland, and I think it's the end of the world. I've never panicked, but I totally panicked. I thought we were going to be lucky if we'd do minus 50% that year. I couldn't imagine anybody would want to buy a watch. I mean, the world was in lockdown. And then that's 17th of March. On the 24th of March, we launched Bulldog. 7 days after, everything is closed, and we actually launch it, and we get all these messages from people like, "You're the only thing which made me smile this week." It's like, wow, cool. And they actually sell. The few pieces we managed to deliver sell. And then in June, we launched the Mosso collab with LM101. And everybody goes ballistic. The 60 pieces sell through in 4 days, which had never, ever happened to us in those days, 15 years history. And we're thinking, maybe it's not going to be such a disaster. And we end up the year at 30% increase of sellout on the year before, which was our best year. But we were down 15% in revenue because we just couldn't deliver between all the lockdowns and everything. And 2021 has been most insane year of my life. I think it was one of the Google guys who said 10 years of insane work to become an overnight success. That's exactly what it feels like. 16 years of insane work and risks and everything you want, 19 calibers, where suddenly everybody seems to discover what you're doing and going, oh, that's cool, I want one. Really? Where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? But we're enjoying it. We're really enjoying it.
Fantastic. Now, we spoke a little bit before we went on screen. You were talking about the increase in production. It's a modest increase in production you're targeting, but you're talking about the scale of your sales relative to that supply, and it's higher still. Could you talk a little bit about what that's like?
In 2013, when my first daughter was born, and I decided I was going to move to Dubai to live, which also meant that clearly you can't, especially COVID didn't exist in those days, and working from home wasn't a normality. You can't work from 6,000 kilometers away and expect to drive a business. So I said, we're not going to grow anymore. And we've been at the same revenue for every year, and it's been perfectly okay. 215 watches in 2019, 215 watches in 2020. This year we're trying to bump up to 275. It's incredibly complex. And the sellout should be at the end of the year between 380 and 400 watches, which means that in about 3-4 months, there will be no more watches anywhere in any retailer, which our friends from FP Jaune and others have lived through. But I still don't want to grow the company. So now it's a hard look at what we want to do. We finally decided, we assembled the whole team and brainstormed and said, okay, we think that we can grow the company by 11% a year and sustain the quality which we're used to giving and continue the creativity. That's our plan for the next 4 years, but anyway, everything is going to change at any given time. The plans are what they are.
So now, the Grunewald brothers have closed their order books. They're not taking any more. They've doubled their manufacturing capacity and closed their order books. Do you see an eventuality where you could actually have to close the order books and just say, past a certain point, we don't want years-long wait lists, we're not taking orders?
It's happening. On the little LM101, our entry model in steel, we were taking deposits up till 2024, up till even a few weeks ago, and then I told the team, stop it. Please stop. But actually, the customers, when we tell them we're not taking deposits anymore, they get really upset. It's like, take my money, at least I will get it in 3 years. Because everybody, excuse my English, is jerking me off, saying, I'll put you on a wait list, and I don't know if I'm going to get this watch. So just take my money. And we're like, now we are also saying, no, we're not taking any more orders. We're just taking your names. Same thing is happening on the LM Perpetual EVO, which in titanium we just launched a month ago. We're already on 2023. And now we're, okay guys, we'll just take your names and we'll see whatever we can do. It's a whole new paradigm. I'm not used to this. I'm not enjoying it. As an entrepreneur, of course, you feel so much better that you don't have to have sleepless nights. Are people going to buy what I do? But as a watch lover, who's always been surrounded by watch lovers and who's been trying to treat people the way you would like to be treated, that's wrong. It just feels so wrong. So I haven't found a solution, and I think if I find it, well, there's very little chance I do, but we're trying to find a way to keep our aficionados happy, not let the merchants come in and swoop in and start doing all the premiums. Let the guys who've supported us, the guys who love what we do, get the pieces. We're working on it.
Now, there are really three parties in the watch business. There's the client, there's the manufacturer, and then there's this kind of gray area of retail where sometimes you have third parties that are distributors and sometimes the factory sells direct. Have you thought, like FP Journe and other brands, that it might make more sense to do all sales through factory stores or direct sales?
There are two things. The first is I'm an incredibly faithful human being in all different ways. And let's not forget that this brand wouldn't exist without my retailers. When I started MB&F 16 years ago, I knew virtually no end consumer. And so it's the retailers who built us. And now what we're doing is that we're actually cutting down a certain amount of retailers and concentrating on those who've been the most loyal, faithful, giving the greatest service, and who can actually share the vision. Would we start all our own mad galleries, or we're creating a concept called MB&F Labs, which we're rolling out? There are 4 new coming out next year, but always with our retailers. Would we want to do them ourselves? No. If you want to keep a perfect service, you should, but the point is not to take the business off the people who helped us. And more importantly, I want to be happy, and HR is always a nightmare. And so I said I would never have more than 15 employees. We're already 30. And actually we had a big workshop 2 weeks ago. And one of the main things is how do we get back our startup attitude we had when we were 10, when we were already 30. And we were working, all of us, saying we have to change the way we work. Imagine if we start having to hire 30, 50, 70 more people just to have boutiques. We will never be able to do that. So again, never say never again. But for the moment, we're just going to continue the way we are and try not to grow.
So Max, you used that term paradigm change earlier. The way I see it, MB&F for the industry was a paradigm change. Legacy Machine was a paradigm change for the company, and frankly, so was the Performance Art and the Mad Gallery. Could it be that there is another facet of the company that you would like to bring about? You mentioned MB&F Labs, to create more commerce without creating more watches?
No, that's not it. But there is something we just tried this year, which was called the Mad Edition, which caused a lot of noise, which is where we never mentioned it. It's not on our website, it's not on our social media, it's nowhere. And we just wanted to say thank you to our tribe, which is actually the club of collectors. And we've had thousands of people write to us, how do I get one? So now we're thinking maybe we'll do a couple of hundred more for customers. But this is another issue. Is I think we give an incredible service to all our customers, incredibly personal. How if you start doing 500, 600, 700 of these other pieces at whatever the price, $2,000, $3,000, can you continue giving that sort of service? And just to give you an idea, the 450 Mad Ones we delivered this year is the revenue of 5 of these. So, but the bandwidth it took our team at every single level is insane. So economically, and that's why people didn't believe me, I said, we don't want to grow this business, it's not a business, but we still want to have fun. We still want to enjoy ourselves, and we don't want to be hated. So the point is, we want our clients to be happy, but we also want all the fans to be happy, those who can't afford MB&F. So that's a whole other chapter, and we're scratching our head, and we don't want to hire more people, and how are we going to do this? Look, it's not our first challenge, and we'll just find ways.
That's fair. So speaking of new challenges and challenges overcome, let's talk about product. How is it that the Legacy Machine Perpetual came to be a sports watch?
That's the Dubai effect. So I've been living in Dubai for 7 years, And I'm very lucky because we've got a little house with a swimming pool and we live 5 minutes from the sea. Now, I used to live in a flat in Switzerland my whole life. And so I've got 2 young daughters, they're 4 and 8 now. And virtually every day we're in the swimming pool or at the sea, because that's the point. And so every day when I'm wearing my Legacy machine, take it off, put it in the safe, and go and put a Rolex 2-door, Zin, Nautilus, Royal Oak. I mean, all the beautiful watches. I'm lucky I've got one of each. And one day I'm in the pool going, excuse my English again, but WTF? Like, what is this? What's wrong with me? And I was like, I would like my Perpetual to be able to wear it in the swimming pool. So there is absolutely no, I'm going to call it, no, how do you say, market research there. It's just me being a capricious kid saying, I want it for myself. But how do you improve or actually change something which is beginning to become like, I'll not use the word iconic, but it's really become like a very important piece of the watchmaking patrimony, that Legacy Machine Perpetual. And we had already waiting lists on it, and now I'm going to actually modify it. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking. It's much easier to create something very different that nobody expects than to touch something which is already loved and successful. And so that's what we did with this piece. So we integrated lugs, integrated a rubber strap. The movement is suspended on what we call the flex ring, which we invented. So it's a system which allows shocks to go like this and like that and amortize them. We've got screw-down crown, double gasket pushers, and I have been wearing it in the water non-stop. And it actually changed my life, and then it scared the hell out of me. Because for 6 months, I wasn't wearing any other watch. And then I'm thinking, have I just committed economical suicide? Because if people buy this and don't buy any more other watches, what am I doing? And then after 6 months, I started in October last year, I realized I was getting bored of wearing it all the time. I love it, but I'm a watch lover. And I started like putting it aside and wearing other watches and coming back to them. And so that was like, whew, okay, I haven't committed economical suicide on that one.
So now, you chose the most complicated Legacy machine to become the first sports Legacy machine. Is there a reason you went for the Perpetual over, say, something like the 101, which is broader appeal?
I just did it for myself. Probably, if I had been a good businessman, I would have done it the other way around and go up, ramp up, but it's just the watch I wanted to wear.
I love that. So speaking of the Legacy machine line, this is a big year for the Legacy machine, 10 years. I don't think anyone ever imagined that MB&F would do a retro watch, and you really didn't. It's more of a what-if conception of like a Jules Verne wristwatch. Could you tell me, how did you originally conceive the Legacy machine back when most people would have thought of something like, I don't know, an HM2, HM3, HM1 as an MB&F? This was very different.
So the LM1 was not supposed to be an LM at all. It was supposed to be an HM. And it was the beginning of my balance wheel fetishism. So when I designed HM4 for the first time, you actually saw the balance wheel at the back of the airplane. I thought it was so cool. And I was trying to do a watch where there would be the balance wheel would be the star. And initially, I'd done something with 3 tubes. One of the tubes had a balance wheel, the other one had hour minutes, and the other one had a power reserve. And whatever I designed with my friend Eric Giroux, whatever we did, and we spent months and months, was either absolutely ugly, unwearable, or looked like the Vianney Halter piece unique that Vianney had done for Goldfile in 2001, which was also like a tubular system. And there is no way I was going to do something which looks like what Vianney had done, because that's not the point. You don't want to go and copy somebody. So we were just turning in circles. Eric was getting super frustrated with all my trials, like we could do that, we could try that. And he was, and one day I was like, you know what, just stop it. And he still got the original design. I do this. Let's try and do a tribute to the pocket watches, and I do it with the 2 dials, the flying balance wheel. The power reserve wasn't yet designed, and Eric, super frustrated, goes like, seriously? And more or less walks out of the meeting. Like, he's the best man at my wedding, he's my best friend. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do that. Everybody in the team, we were like 6 or 7 in those days, like, Max, we haven't joined MB&F to do a round classic watch. I'm like, you know what, I wanna do this. And so first we sat down with Jean-François Mojon, who was not yet well known. He had done the De Grisogono Meccanico, which was an amazing piece, which hasn't really been understood. And he'd done the MCT original piece. And so I went to see him, I'm like, this is the idea. He was like, oh yeah, let's do this. I said, but I would need somebody who's really, you say in French, le garant du cadre, the person who keeps the legitimacy and brings the know-how of a pocket watch. And Jean-François had already worked with Kari, and I knew Kari, and we're like, maybe we can try Kari. I don't know if I told you the story of how we went up to see Kari, no?
No, this is new to me.
So we all go up to Kari, to his workshops in Motier, and I say, look, Kari, I'm going to create a completely different product. It's much more classic. It's an inspiration of pocket watches, and would really like you to work with me on that project. And he just looks at me and goes, I've got too much work. I just can't take any more projects, so thank you very much, but no. And then we are like, oh. So I said, look, I take out the drawing, which is actually the drawing of what the watch is going to be, and say, look, this is the idea. The flying balance wheel, the 2 time zones, the vertical power reserve by then, etc. And he looks at this. I was like, oh, and then he starts, oh, the balance wheel could be like this, and I think the bridge could be like that, and he's talking all alone. Now he's like drawing on my drawing for like 5 minutes. We don't talk at all. We look at him, and suddenly he lifts his head, and I look at him and I said, does that mean you're going to do it? And he cracks up with this enormous grin, and he goes, this I'm going to do. And that's the beginning of the story of us working with Kari, LM1, LM2, LM101, and Thunderdome. 10 years of working together. It's amazing, thanks to that meeting.
So now we are at the 10th anniversary. We have the LMX, and this is a celebration, by far the longest power reserve you've ever had in a Legacy machine.
Yes.
And I mean, the watch is larger than life, but there's a lot to it. Could you talk a little bit about what makes this 10th anniversary watch different, other than the power reserve, which is monumental at 7 days? It's really a celebration of everything you've done in the last 10 years.
In Legacy Machine. So the idea was, we go back to the source, to LM1, and we basically put it on steroids. What would we do today if we were going to create an LM1? The 2 time zones remain the same, but they become now at 50 degrees, because it's much more 3-dimensional. The 3 barrels bring 7-day power reserve instead of 1 barrel, which is 45 hours. The fact that what people love, and me the first, is typically on the perpetual calendar, is you see part of the components, and not only the simple bridge. So you have the hours and minutes wheels in front, of course the escapement in front, and the 3-dimensional power reserve indicator, which is not only now like this, but it actually rotates on itself. At the end of the winding up, it doesn't block like any hand winding movement. You've got a system which then a débraye, which like a clutch, opens it up, and you continue turning, and the whole indicator turns on itself. Therefore, you can decide, there's one side written Sunday to Monday, and the other one which is 1 to 7, and you decide which way you want to see it. We use the aesthetics of the Thunderdome, or the Flying T, which gave us much more height to work with. Even the watch is not thicker than an LM Perpetual. It looks much thicker, but the case is super thin, and the rest is sapphire. So it's got this this feel of, I always think of the city of Atlantis. When I was a kid, you always imagined that there was the city of Atlantis underwater, under a dome, and you see that little city. And it's really a little city when you look at it. And when I wear an LMX, people lose me. I'm like, oh, God, you see all the different details. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what watchmaking should be, at least for me.
Now, certainly, I'm a nerd. I watched Stargate Atlantis, so I have that same visual. But I'll add that You just announced a huge collaboration in the world of the Legacy Machine, and I've noticed in the past your collaborations, they started with the likes of, smaller artisans, James Thompson, Alain Silberstein. Then you moved
Stepan Sarpaneva.
Sarpaneva as well, and many other of that ilk. Then you did a collaboration with Moser, which is sort of like a peer in manufacturing. Yep. Now you've announced a collaboration with Bulgari, which is orders of magnitude larger. How did that come to be?
It's always a question of human beings. So 4 years ago, here at Dubai Watch Week, I see Fabrizio Buonamassa that I've never been introduced to, but I love his work. And so I go up to him and say, "Ciao Fabrizio, I'm Max. Pleasure to meet you." And he's like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And we go and have a coffee. And if anybody who knows Fabrizio knows that he's always walking around with a pen and paper. And I was like, one day it would be cool to do something together. He's like, "Yeah, let's do that." And he starts sketching like crazy. Not on a flying T then, no. Actually, he designed an HM5 and things like with Bulgari HM5 and all sorts of things. I was like, wow, this is so cool. And we just stayed there because it was just a moment in time. It was not, for him and for me, not even thinkable. 2 years later, fast forward, Grand Prix d'Horlogerie of Geneva, which is always 2 weeks before Dubai Watch Week. I come out of the parking of the hotel where there's the event, and there is Fabrizio. "Hey, ciao, Fabrizio, how are you?" And next to him is a gentleman I don't know. It's Antoine Pin. Oh, hello. He gives me his card, and I see managing director of Bulgari timepieces. And we continue walking together. And at some point, we get into the auditorium, and I'm like, "So, Antoine, you want to do a collab? Because Fabrizio and I, we've got a few ideas." And instead of the normal, which I was expecting, "Yeah, we'll talk about it," sort of, he's like, "Yeah, why not?" I'm like, "Okay." He says, "Are you in Dubai Watch Week?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So, Dubai Watch Week 2 years ago, we have breakfast at the Bulgari Hotel. First day, Fabrizio, Antoine, we continue sketching stuff. And Antoine says, "Okay, let's do it." You may want to talk with Mr. Babin before we decide anything. He said, yeah, I'll talk to him. And then a week later, he calls me up and said, "I spoke to Jean-Christophe, it's a no-brainer, he wants to do it." Really? And that's how it all started. So yes, they're an enormous brand, they're an incredibly successful brand, they're incredibly innovative and risk-taking brand, let's not forget that. And it was amazing for us to end up, I was a little bit scared, I will tell you, I was actually totally terrified to work with a big organization like that because I thought there would be like 12 levels of approvals and all that stuff. These guys, the watch division at Bulgari, they're like gung-ho entrepreneurs, and you can see how many Octo Finissimo they've come out with in the last few years. Like every year they're coming out with one, with plus all sorts of other variations of products, and they work like us. These guys are like gung-ho. And so it just went, and I'm not saying that because honestly, if it hadn't worked well, I wouldn't be telling you how great it is. It really was great. And it just worked to help. The whole idea, I've got a flying T I created for the women in my life, but we're not jewelers. Guys, have fun. And so they created they put the Allegra concept on it. Fabrizio made me change the whole case. He redesigned everything. And it just made sense. And there's something which hit me even just a few weeks ago. 20 years ago, I was a guy representing a jeweler called Harry Winston, exactly 20 years ago, which created a little collab called Opus One with a gentleman that nobody knew at the time called François Paul Journe. And 20 years later, I'm the watchmaker and Bulgari is the jeweler. What a journey. What a journey.
As you can see, Max's circle of friends continues to expand. It's Max Büsser and WatchBox at Dubai Watch Week 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.